Hey everybody. So this evening we're going to talk about something really big. How gold is found. Why are we discussing something that seems so obvious? Because it's not, and it never hurts to repeat. I had a math professor once, calculus, who taught me something very useful in life. You see, a student in the class who had been kind of a snob, he was getting A's. I was, stumbling along but getting it, but working my way through slowly. Now, this guy was making a big comment about some remark I had made or some other student had made, a question that seemed kind of dumb and kind of obvious. And the statement from the professor stopped everybody in their tracks. He said, wait, talking to the straight A student who had said, well, that's obvious. You need to just pay attention and learn faster kind of thing. And the professor stopped and he says, wait, listen, all of what we've done so far is basic introduction to the real problem. As I was taught once, and he spoke in this heavy Swiss accent, so when I went to school, I was taught that you learn to climb mountains by learning to climb hills first. We are climbing hills right now, and soon enough we shall climb mountains. When we got to the mountains, guess where that student was? He decided a B wasn't good enough, so he bailed on the class. I did pretty good. So it's something I want to point out, that whenever you're studying something like gold and how gold is found, you're going to run into those who think they can climb mountains by skipping all of the basics of learning to climb hills. It does not work out well. And so if you want to learn how to make it work out well for you in prospecting and hunting for gold, you need to learn to climb those hills and climb them well and fast. So that's kind of what tonight is another reiteration on a little bit of the gold finding system I've talked about earlier, but a little different angle on it. I also wanted to point out that again tonight we are sponsored once again by SouردoughMiner.com GPC. That stands for the Gold Prospectors Collection, which is a 5 DVD series of those hill climbing strategies that teach you how to get ready to climb those mountains. And so you might want to take a look at that and check it out. So that's what tonight's sponsorship is and what it's all about. So let's go back to tonight's topic, how gold is found. First, let's check on our standard practice. Is the audio coming through and is the video coming through? Now that there's a handful of you on, I can check it out. Usually spool this thing up and let it, find out how things are going first, and then we check it just to make sure. We've had enough problems, enough missed videos, although not too bad, about 3. So I just don't want to miss any more because I don't want to miss you guys. Okay, here we are. Hunting for Gold is live now. 13 people on, 5 comments. And let's see what we got here for the comments and the audio. I don't want to miss you guys. All right, there we go. Okay, here we are. Hunting for Gold is live now. Okay, so we are going to go for the gold. How gold is found. Good evening, everybody. Hi, Owen. Or Gwen, rather. Eyes. Remember this thing with these glasses? Well, I'm not wearing them right now. I don't know. It doesn't look like a movie star. Go figure. I don't know. I actually see that screen easier, and I see this screen easier with the small glasses, so go figure. Hey, there's Tyson. He's on from New York, and audio, video good. Thanks. Brad's here from Texas again. Bob Sheasley from North Carolina, and Charles is here. All is okay. Okay, then let's go. Okay, so how gold is found. I thought what I'd do is just kind of walk through a simple display and kind of go around the margins of this thing. So I got a little slide deck prepared for you. Uh-oh, here he goes. You start talking about calculus and all that junk, and he goes off with a slide deck. So let's take a look. Okay, okay, so I'm going to be off the screen for the time being while I present this deck, and then we'll come back to me. So for this instance, what we're looking at is a simple representation of how gold is found, and I'm just going to walk you through what's in my head and how I view gold. And so let's take a look. So gold, what is it? How is it found? So when we think about gold, we oftentimes think about, well, it's shiny material and it's valuable. But there's a deeper thing going on here. One is that shiny material has a bunch of properties that we need to understand. Those properties are paramount to finding it. So understanding what makes gold interesting from a physical point of view, the physics, the mineralogy and geology associated with it is important. But the physics is one of the things that makes it interesting. It has a certain light spectrum that it gives off. When it receives white light, it only irradiates or radiates back off a certain spectrum, and that makes it very unique and one of the identifying characteristics. But it does alloy with other materials, so it can vary in what it looks like. So you have to be ready for that. The other thing about gold is its density. But its density is 19 point whatever, okay? And the problem is the point whatever can vary all the way from, probably around 11 or 12, when it alloys with other stuff. Zinc and copper and you name it, okay? And so pretty soon this stuff can be very soft or very hard and have all kinds of other properties because it alloys with all these other metals. And you just need to understand that. The primary one in the field that you're going to be dealing with is going to be silver and copper. Those two alloys present a whole myriad of flavors of gold and also present the greatest volume for gold extraction. So you just want to be aware of what is out there and what it looks like and how much the density varies and how much the properties vary. As far as one of the other key features is that gold is what used to be thought of as immutable. It means it is very much resistant to corrosion, to oxidation and other reactions, chemical reactions. It has a pretty high, not as high as silver, but a pretty high conductivity as well, and that plays a big role when you're talking metal detectors. So just keep that in mind, and then we go on. So just the physical principles of gold are important in understanding and finding it. Next thing. So in the sequence of events, I thought I'd take you through in the sequence that I like to think about when I'm thinking of finding gold. And one of the next steps I do is dive into the history and the records. So that's why I paid a lot of attention in the training we've done over the last 3 months on the USGS MRDS and plotting out the local gold history and all those records. That's just the beginning. Then we would go to the county records and we'd look at that material and so forth. We'd look at the BLM or any other associated group. In Canada, you look at the Canadian mineral, Canadian mineral, I forget the term, their registry, and find out what claims are associated with that and what their history is. Because not only are you interested in the claim, you're also interested in the history. Because the history will help tell you where gold was found in the past, you can likely find gold in the future. After all, how is gold found? So let's go to the next piece. Next piece says rocks and geology. So I usually pop to that one next, in part because now I have zeroed in on a location. I have some history and some records about the gold, and I know kind of what I'm looking for. The other thing I want to find out is what is the history of the geology of the area, and so I need some geologic maps and some topology maps to kind of start plotting out and thinking about the claim area I'm looking at. What am I dealing with? I remember a good friend of mine who's also into gold. He's also a geologist by profession and does a lot of work with soils and mineralogy, and it was a crack up. He bequeathed to me a whole series of geologic maps that he had pulled out from formal records. These are, a massive book of geologic maps all the way up and down the Sierra Nevada. Fantastic stuff to have. And reason? Because the geology tells you a little bit more about the history, not just the history of human beings and their hunt for gold, but the history of the minerals that are produced by various types of geologic activities that also produce gold. And once you know what those are, you can start looking for the hints that tell you before you ever get there where to look for gold and what you're looking for when you get there. So let's go to the next section. So now we start looking at water dynamics, and that gets into the whole thing we do in 2020 and all of the processing and understanding of traps and flows and water flow and dynamics and what makes gold move and what makes gold stop moving. Because what you're really interested in most of all is the trail that gold went on. What was its trail as it went from the source lode to the deposit in placer, and maybe you want to work your way backwards from the placer to the lode. That's great, but you need to have that understanding of the dynamics of what would move the gold and how it would go downhill, downstream. So I always emphasize that feature, downhill, downstream. So the next step we go through is look at, we've done 3 different things, 3 areas of study. The 4th area of study that we get into, and the real final area, is tools and methods. Now this is where most folks start. It's a big mistake. You notice I went through 3 other major areas of study that cost very, very little to understand what tools and methods you're going to need when you get there. And once you start uncovering stuff, you'll have a much better idea how to move to the next thing, or buy the next tool, or get the next tool, or borrow or rent, or whatever you need, before you waste your money on the tools and methods first. It's the big shiny in this business, and you got to avoid it like the plague. And by big shiny, I mean, shiners like in fish lures. Ouch, that hurts. So here's the deal. When I look at gold, I start looking in the sequence I just gave you, and I try to find out what it is about the gold that makes it interesting in this area. And so the thing we're trying to do here now is get a good idea, a good picture. Let me get over here. I'm on the wrong screen. So we want to get a good picture of what makes this system work for us, and then continually go around this sequence every time we practice. For example, history and records doesn't just include historic records. It should include your records. Are you keeping a notebook? Are you tracking how much gold you're finding and where you're finding it? Are you putting that down and keeping a map that tells you the locations that you found those things? Because they're going to form, we talked about vectors before, they're going to form the vector, the amount of gold and the direction the gold is headed. That's going to tell you where the pay streak is. And that's the ultimate thing. It's not the ultimate thing to find a nugget. It's the ultimate thing to find a pay streak. Finding a nugget's a great sign, and it's a great thing to find. Don't get me wrong. But that's just the beginning of how gold is found. Gold is found by methodically going through and hunting for the trail and tracking it with your records, and using that as part of your history and the history of those that came before you, so that you can find more gold quicker. And that's kind of the dynamics of this whole situation. So I just wanted to talk about that tonight, and do a quick journey. Any questions that you might have on this topic? It's kind of, got to get over here and then say escape, and then say, yeah, it's enough of that. Okay, so any questions? Students, have you climbed a hill or a mountain tonight? Hi from New York, says Tyson. Audio is great. And Paulo Odin says he's still flooding in Oklahoma, and he's got tornadoes. Hang in there, guys, man. Keep safe. That is really sad, what happened there in Missouri. I'm sorry to hear all that. Wayne says, as usual, good teaching. Thanks for sharing your wisdom. You're welcome. And as I said before, check out tonight's sponsor thing is this Gold Prospectors Collection. It covers all 4 of those zones. It's a quick journey. It's intended to kind of get you going quickly. There's other material as well, but that one's the one I encourage people who are looking at those areas we just plotted out and say, how do I get started on that? And that's the deal. Okay, so for tonight, I just wanted to talk on how gold is found. It seems like a big, nebulous topic, but it's really not when you break it down into those 4 zones. The 5th one being what gold really is in the first place. That helps a lot. And that's it for tonight. Prospector Jess, over and out. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you tomorrow night. Okay. Good night. Good prospecting.